we'll take our time to be here. I want to just first congratulate each of you on getting here, making that space and time for yourself. I know it's not easy for a lot of people to carve out that dedicated time and space for self-care and for creativity, and even more so for carers and the challenges. Let's just up the ante with the challenges. Yeah. As Matthew said, it's an experiential kind of session. It's not me giving a lecture. It's just you. We'll take our time connecting with ourselves, with each other, with creativity, which might feel like a long lost thing or something that you don't even relate to, or it might feel very close to you, or anything in between. There's room for each of you, and I guess together we make a safe, non-judgmental environment. Within that environment, it's my hope that you do feel comfortable enough and supported enough to open to something of your creativity and to yourself and to each other. And it's some time out from day-to-day cares. Art making, well, some of you might be aware, in touch with this, and some of you not, that it can have so many benefits. It doesn't have to, I think it's for everybody. It doesn't have to be this highfalutin elitist thing that, that's, or like my sister's really good at art, but I'm not, or, a lot of us have all sorts of ideas about whether, we're any good at it, whether it's worthwhile, whether it's an indulgence, that sort of thing. There's often preconceived ideas. However, in spite of all of that, here we are, here you are, yay! I'm really happy to spend time with you in this space and delighted that you're here. And so is there anything that needs to be asked or said in particular before we kind of go into a little bit of a playful, creative exercise? So fabulous. So some of you are familiar with this. Is the one that we've done a few times in these sessions, a way to connect with yourself a bit more deeply, and a bit of a lateral way of looking at the world. So maybe if you're willing to close your eyes, maybe just get comfy in your chair. And notice your feet making contact with the floor, and your parts of your body that make contact with the chair and with the air and space around you. I'm noticing myself doing this, letting yourself let go of a strong breath or two. Maybe even a sound, a yawn, a sigh, grisly, grumbly sound at the back of your throat. It's okay to make a nonsensical sound, just to help to let go of other stuff and to land and arrive into yourself in this moment. And either with your eyes continuing to be closed, or if you feel that you want to open your eyes, let yourself notice a sensory object, a sensory experience. So it might be a sound that you hear. It might be, if you open your eyes, something that you see, something that you notice, a familiar or unfamiliar object. It might be something that your hands are making physical contact with, something that you're touching. So just let yourself choose a sensory experience object. It might even be noticing selection or rejection of something. Just it might even be the very first thing that you become aware of, or it could be a selection process. Knowing that whatever you choose has something to offer or yield. And allow that sensory object, that sound or item that you're looking at or touching, to say two things to you. And one thing is, I am. So allow it to speak something of it, what it is, who it is to you, I am. And the second thing is, I offer you. I offer you, ... And just allow yourself to welcome whatever comes to you. It might not make any sense whatsoever to your rational mind. And we'll have a really swift amount of time, a few minutes, to either continue to sit in that space of being with that, being with yourself and being with that sensory object, or to make a mark on paper in response to it, or to journal, to write down, if you want to, something of what came through, the I am, the I offer you. It's fine to simply sit in the space, whatever is most nourishing for you. Might just be a colour or a word that comes onto the paper. It might be just being with what this small experience, this thing, has to offer you, tells you about itself. And there's no right or wrong way of doing this process, this exercise, or indeed any of what we do here this morning. It's more about a quality of being with yourself, with the materials at hand. we'll have just another couple of minutes in this particular space. So we've begun. You've connected with creativity, just like that. and you know, potentially that little exercise of just tuning into something that you hear or see or whatever it is just can flip your perspective. Yeah, on you know, I know for myself I can be very caught up in, it's like I'm wearing a big sort of, these are my thoughts, big some sort of headdress, that's all I can hear or see. Yeah, and just that little window into a different way of perceiving can be quite refreshing and nourishing and lead to insights, let alone art or writing. So if you're okay to have a piece of paper nearby, big or small, it's whatever it is, and maybe let yourself choose a colour that you like, if you've got colours. If you don't have colours, just whatever you've got there is fine. So it's hopefully a colour that you like, something that's easy to make marks with, maybe with your eye, even with your eyes closed. And perhaps also in your other hand, a colour that you don't like so much or that you're less likely to play with, or a colour that intrigues you. So you've got, and it might be in your dominant hand. You know, you feel into this for yourself. It's which colour goes in which hand. You might want to just start with the one. But I invite you also to have a play at some stage with the two. So, and if you're okay to close your eyes again. So this is once again a fairly brief creative play, land on the page, land into yourself kind of exercise. If you feel like closing your eyes, having a bit of a sacred scribble, I think of it a sacred scribble, with perhaps starting with the colour that you like. Making contact with the paper. Knowing that if your eyes are closed, there is less control over what emerges on the paper, and seeing if that can be okay even for now. It might, and it doesn't have to be. If you want to see what's emerging, that's also completely fine. But it might help with eyes closed to tune into the physical, tactile, heartful connections internally and then with the materials coming out onto the paper. So allow the gesture that wants to come through. Doesn't have to be a particular thing. It might be swirly, it might be stabby and staccato. It might be tiny, tiny movements. It might be large sweeping movements. So at some stage you might, if you've had your eyes closed, you might open your eyes and see if you can look with kindness at what's appeared there on the page, just knowing that it's an expression of whatever has been coming through. It's not the sum of you for all time with creative expressions and abilities or anything like that. It's and you might want to, with the same hand or with your other hand, if you haven't been using both, if you've been using one of the colors, you might have a play with the color that you like less. Bring that either onto the, that's your choice. There are many choices here. It might be onto a different piece of paper. You might want to keep the enjoyment color separate from the not so liking color. Or you might want to just play with the one that you don't like so much and see what it's like. See how it goes interacting with the one that you do like. Just realizing my instructions this morning feel a little bit woolly to me. No, hopefully it's whatever resonates for you. And as I said, there's, it's not, there's no preconceived way of doing this or correct way of doing this. It might be, if you do feel comfortable with having a play with both hands, to just see what that's like. Maybe even making a similar gesture with each hand at the same time. That's even got a name, a fancy name. That one's bilateral drawing, which can be a really interesting and valuable exploration in itself. It's like, what happens if both sides of my body are making these marks at the same time? It's simply a play, an experiment. We'll have another few minutes with this. Perhaps allowing drawing or the mark making, whatever it is, to actually nourish you in your body, in your being. Some of you have heard me say this before. My 2 Sally Swain creativity guidelines are: 1, breathe, and 2, be kind to yourself. They sound simple, not necessarily so much. So as we find a finishing or pausing place for this round of art making, you might just notice something for yourself about relationship or interactions or exchange. Just see if that resonates for you in something to do with your art process or something inside yourself. So we'll have another minute with this one. And it might be that you don't want to finish this one, and that's completely fine if you want to keep going. And it might be we'll have another round of art making soon, and it might be that you simply want to continue with something that you've already begun here this morning, which is utterly fine. So just noticing if you have made a pause or a finishing gesture, noticing what's with you at this moment, how that was. What's one thing you noticed in the art making process itself? Or if you look at what you've created, what's one thing you see? So, fabulous folk, let's venture into the next bit of creative process adventure. So probably if you've got, so bigger than A4 paper is probably, but if you, yeah, so you want a piece of paper that you can divide into maybe 3 sections, 3 or 4 sections. I'm thinking, yep, 3 or 4 sections. And when I say divide, it doesn't have to be, you know, your regular, these are 4 rectangles, although that can be helpful with this sort of exercise. So this is what I think of as picture story exercise process, and it's really just a taster of it. because it's fairly, we'll have about 20 minutes with it. So once again, a bit of a play. And so I invite you to choose a shape or symbol, a simple symbol or shape. It might be a spiral, seeing that's one of the things that came through so strongly. Might be something that you'll be able to in some way reproduce across the 3 or 4 sections. So just something simple and small that kind of resonates for you. That's like so it's kind of like, I am a spiral, or I am a star, or I am a bird, or I am a leaf, I am a blob. It could be just a really simple, easy to reproduce in, not accurately, but a reproduce kind of shape or symbol that we're just going to have a little play with. You can't go wrong with your choice. There's no, there is no right or wrong, and you can't go wrong, because just as with the sensory object before, whatever you choose to be with will yield, will reveal and yield something for you. So if you let yourself have a little symbol or shape to be you, and just have a play with this picture story. So let yourself draw, place, make some version of that shape in the first section, first area on the page, however, and just notice however it appears. We'll spend just a couple of minutes with it. You might think of the sections of the page as panels. It's kind of like panels in a little unfolding story that we might discover as we go along. So in the first panel, there's your shape or symbol or motif, just being itself, however it is in this moment. And I invite you to add some words to that. So it might be, I am a spiral, I'm just sitting here on the sand, or whatever, just something, maybe a couple of things about yourself as this shape. Could be anything. I am a purple leaf, I don't know why I'm purple, or I am a sad bird, whatever it is. And when you're ready, I invite you to move to the next panel or cell in this kind of animated, this picture story. So allow the shape, the being, the little motif that is you to appear again. It might be kind of almost exactly the same as it was in the first panel, or it might be some sort of natural movement, or that we see something else in this scene, or something about the first image naturally invites in, you know, or it might someone else, another being might arrive, or you might not want that to happen. You might want to, that little being, that spiral, that bob, that diamond, whatever it is, might just simply notice something else. Doesn't have to be about something dramatic happening, although it might be. So it's this same being, but perhaps a few moments later. So it's kind of a what happens next? Or it could be a what doesn't happen next. A reminder that it doesn't have to make sense to your rational, linear way of thinking that maybe has to come into play out there in the world all the time. It's just an opportunity to play with it, maybe in a childlike way. Just it might be allowing the colors and shapes and forms of the being itself, the little motif, the little being itself, to dictate what happens or doesn't happen. Or it might be just an addition, or, you know, if the being before said, I am green, it might say, I'm green and I'm spiky. Or, oh, looks like I'm sliding off the log. Who knows what's going to emerge. So this is the Art for Wellbeing session where you probably get where I push you the most. So I hope that's okay. I hope you're coping with this. And so sometime in the next couple of minutes, if this is the process that you're engaging with, the picture story, and that's fine if it's not, if you're doing your own thing entirely, completely, absolutely okay. But if you are engaging in this, you might want to move to the third panel and then the fourth panel if you've got one. So we've got another 5 minutes or so with this exercise, this process, just to give you an idea of the shape of timing. And remember, it doesn't have to be about pushing, forcing anything to happen. It's really much more about allowing something to happen. There's plenty of places and spaces in our lives where we're pushing and striving and trying to organize and manage. And this is one where the opposite can happen. So it's just allowing your art hands and your art heart to go where they want to go. and allow the mark making and probably the words that emerge to surprise you. And if the most important thing for you this morning in your creative self-care is to unfrazzle, to breathe, to notice something that's happening internally in yourself, allow the process to take you to that place. Doesn't have to be anything other than that. We'll just have about 3 more minutes with this process. And allowing your unfolding story, picture story, however it's appeared and manifested on the paper and via the art materials, allow it to find its natural ending. Could be the end of just this chapter. No. knowing that the materials are there to support you in your expression, your externalizing of something that might be inside, your playtime. And so we will find a finishing point for this. If it does feel unfinished to you, you might have to make a creative date with yourself during the next couple of weeks, even for 10 minutes. Even for 10 minutes, making contact with some of those art materials. And once again, allowing what I perceive as your wise, kind witness self to come into play in relation to that process, this process, what's emerged on the page. Simply noticing how that was and what's alive in you now. And what it is that you see that's appeared on the paper. Oh, so we're coming towards finishing this session, this Artful Wellbeing session, and you have engaged with not one, not two, but 3 creative processes, and the third one being one of many parts. Extraordinary. I'm hoping that as some of you have expressed, that you have benefited and gotten something from this session for yourself for now, and possibly something that you would like to take with you, a learning or an experience, and the artwork that you've created that might continue to nourish you in some way. And I guess along those lines, perhaps let yourself just lightly reflect on today. So it was the tuning into a sensory object, finding out in the moment what it might something about it and what it might have to offer you. The play with the sacred scribble, and then possibly even the bilateral drawing, and the play with choosing a colour that you like and maybe one that you like less, and the textures and the shapes and gestures that emerged. And then this picture story, which I originally got from a book called The Gestalt Art Experience. I've dug it up here. It's, I think, from the 70s, ancient, from another era. The little section's called Animate Yourself. Animate yourself. Think of it as, you know, you can think of it as like almost like cartoon therapy. So it's like you're making, you know, allowing a little picture story to emerge. Wonderful thing to play with. So, yeah, maybe just if you're able to say, what's the main thing for yourself that you're taking away with you from this session, this Art for Wellbeing session? And maybe even what's a next step for you in relation to your, might be in relation to your self-care, to your creativity. Just see if there's a next step for you. It could be a tiny, tiny step. It could just be packing up the art materials. I don't know what it might be. It might be breathing. It might be looking at the tree in the sunshine at some stage for 2 minutes. So just, yeah, the main thing that you got from today, and if it comes to you, a next step. We have got that one more session coming up on the 1st of July. So some of you hopefully are able to come and understand if you can't. So Circle of Sustenance, I think it's called, Circle of Sustenance. Just also wanting to say to you, with these beautiful desires and intentions and knowings about the benefits of this sort of process and the desire to set aside time and dedicated space, is to also there's a little voice in me sort of saying, and if you don't get to do that as much or as often as you would like, please don't beat yourself up about that, because that's also very important. That's an important part of the process. Yeah, so it's, I mean, it can be frustrating if you sort of think, yeah, I want to do this every day, and then you don't get to it or whatever. But, you know, it's something about, see if you can continue with that spirit of kindness and generosity towards your creative self, your self that does allow that time and space. So yes, I think it's fantastic and exciting that you are intending and hoping to carve that time out for yourself.